What is up, everyone? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be reacting to what the fuck is happening to Liam Lawson. I am looking forward to getting into this one. This video came out like a day ago, so I don't know if they're gonna talk about how the swap has already happened or whether this came out before the news. But obviously it's now been announced that Red Bull have swapped Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda. So Yuki's driving at Red Bull and now Liam's driving at AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso, RB, whatever you want to call them, he's driving that. So, I mean, this is going to be interesting. We all know that Red Bull are prone to kicking out their drivers halfway through a season. They did it to Gasly, they did it to Albon, now they've done it to Liam. Liam only had 2 races. I do feel a bit sorry for him, but he was like at the back in a Red Bull. But a lot of people are saying that this is when Red Bull realised that they've built a car around Max and nobody else can drive the car. I don't know whether that's true or not. Obviously, we'll have to see if Yuki can do well in Japan. That's going to be exciting to see as well, because it'll be like his home race and he'll be in Red Bull. So he'll finally get his chance, which is exciting for him, but also it's a bummer for Lawson. So if this video came out after the news, then he's obviously going to talk about that. But if it came out before the news, then he's going to probably talk about how there'll be a potential swap or something. But I'm looking forward to getting into it anyway, as one of you has requested it. So I'm just going to shut up and we'll get straight into it. Okay, I don't know whether that was my reaction.
A higher ceiling? So much for that. There is a couple of things that you've got to know about the New Zealand sportsman's psyche. The first is that we will defend our sports people until the ends of the earth.
Yeah.
We'll brand them as heroes, gods even. We'll have them advertise canned mush, and we'll call them the best in the world, even if they've never played a game in their life. But the moment they begin to struggle, we'll drop them like a DC-10. It's called tall poppy syndrome, and it is our biggest failing.
Great.
Among other things. I've made it no secret about how much I rated Liam Lawson. Thought of him as New Zealand's best prospect for a Formula 1 driver since, well, it has been a long time since we last had one, which is why this was so tantalizing. Sure, the prospect...
That's interesting, because I didn't have that opinion going into this season.
Our heads jammed so far up our own arse that we can see past stuff like that. But now that it's all already over, I guess it's time for us as a nation to pull our party trick and cut bait with Liam Lawson. Right? Well, yes and no, because a lot of stuff has led up to this point, and it seems that we always tend to forget.
Okay. 2018
was the bestest time in the world for Red Bull racing. But well, maybe not quite.
Because they had Daniel Ricciardo.
Were the king of the hill at the time, but the team at Milton Keynes could still hold an answer for them, from time to time at least, thanks to the pencil of Adrian Newey, as well as their 2 fantastic drivers at the helm. Obviously, they had Max Verstappen. Still a little rough around the edges, but they can make it work. They went through hell and creation for this guy, and they were gonna see it through to the bitter end. But the other marquee driver that they had over the past few seasons, one that had earned a lot of bread for them, was Daniel Ricciardo. Established, fast, cool, funny, Australian. Well, no one's perfect. Though in instances like Monaco that year, you'd swear that he was. Just different gravy. But despite being the commodity that he was for that team, whether commercially or on the racetrack, Danny Big Dick McRick laid the smackdown on Red Bull that year by announcing that for 2019, he would be vamoosing to Renault.
That hurts me, because if you do the what if and you think, what if he'd never left Red Bull, where would that be now? Like, it hurts me too much.
Max, as throughout 2018, Max was becoming more polished as the season went on. This left a vacancy at the Red Bull team for 2019. I'm sure if Red Bull can clone, they would have 2 Max Verstappens in that team. But that technology wasn't quite available at that time, so they instead opted for Pierre Gasly. Gasly had shown his stuff in the Toro Rosso.
I've seen so many people say that since Danny left, he's like cursed the second Red Bull seat. Because no one's been able to do it.
And swapped him with Alexander Albon. It was a bad drowning for Gazza, but that happens sometimes in Formula 1. They ran with Albon for the better part of a year and a half before cutting him loose as well. And in 2021, they would take on board an outsider in the form of Sergio Perez. A worthwhile signing, and it was deserving, but it did kind of tell how desperate Red Bull were at the time. Their last 2 two junior drivers didn't work, so best
To be fair, Perez did do well when he,
for the better part of a couple of years,
like during his
Checo
time, he
did
did
pretty
have
much
a lot
look
of
like Red
wins
Bull
and stuff.
finally needed, but gradually
Podiums
things
and blah,
started
blah,
to
blah.
slide, and throughout the entirety of 2024, his seat was in constant jeopardy. Finally, they would get rid of him at the end of the season and replace him with, at long last, one of their juniors, Liam Lawson. And right off the bat, it was met with firm resistance from a lot of people looking in from the outside. A lot of fans hated it, and people around the paddock were puzzled. Lawson only had...
I don't want to say I hated it, because that's the wrong word. But when the news was announced that they would be putting Lawson in Red Bull, I was confused. Can't lie. I know that everyone was waiting for Lawson to have his turn and blah, blah, blah. But wouldn't it have made more sense to put Yuki in the Red Bull, as he had been with AlphaTauri for so long, so he knew the ins and outs of Red Bull, to put him in said Red Bull and put Lawson in like the junior Red Bull team, even though I don't... why do we even call it a junior team at this point? Because like Yuki was at that team for years. He's not a junior driver. I don't understand that. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So when the news came out that Lawson was driving for Red Bull, yeah, I was confused. And yeah, I was worried for the 2025 season. And I said it multiple times in multiple different videos. I said no hate against Lawson. I really hope he does well. But I am worried that we're going to have the same situation that we had with Gasly and Albon. And, oh, I predicted it. Okay? I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so. Because now we're in the situation where they've kicked out Lawson again. So I don't think hate is the right word, but I was definitely confused when they announced that Lawson was driving for Red Bull. That makes sense.
Had 11 races under his belt in the 2 quarter stints that he had at VCarb, and both were fine, I guess. Under the circumstances and everything, they were perfectly acceptable. But on paper, he was comprehensively beaten by teammate Yuki Tsunoda. It was generally thought that Yuki-san was much more prepared for that Red Bull seat than Liam was. But Red Bull tried to claim that after analysing everything, that Liam was the better option and that he had a higher ceiling and blah 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 blah. Yuki therefore was looked over for reasons that were only really known to them, despite his adamance that he wanted that seat and that it was more suited to his driving style. And even Honda weighing in couldn't get them to budge toward Yuki, and so the commitment was made. The hat was over the wall. That 2025 Red Bull seat was Liam's. Now, no one was under any illusion about what Liam was going up against when heading into that seat. I mean, yeah, I did make the not at all badly aged proclamation that he would put the damn thing on the front row in Melbourne and that he would win a race at some stage during the season. But that was made in the thought that, at some stage, this curse bestowed upon the second Red Bull seat surely had to end, right? Right?
Wrong.
Pre-season testing didn't really show us too much of anything. Nobody really knew where anybody was, but there was definitely nothing that caused any alarm. Well, apart from the spin, but almost all of us have an account on X, so we can't be throwing glass and stone houses now, can't we? The Red Bull did look a bit of a bastard to drive, but as Liam said before the season started, in Formula 1, you have got to adapt. You see, that's the thing about saying things. They come back to bite you. Red Bull also insisted that they would give Liam the time to learn, grow, and develop to morph into the driver that they all believed that he was. And that would come in handy in the first round of Melbourne, as it was a track that, save for a couple of demo laps in a V8 supercar, he had never driven at before. But as any Australasian kid could tell you, you do live on this track on video games growing up, so he sure as hell knew which way the track went. That this was turn 1, this was turn 6, and this was the SS complex where you run over ducks. Immediately that weekend, it was evident that Red Bull was struggling with the pace of the car, but one was struggling more than the other. In FP1, Liam was struggling down in 16th, before improving on that in FP2 with a 17th placing. In FP3, he was sidelined for almost the entire session owing to a car problem when the rat poison finally filtered through the fuel lines and munted his engine. That meant that he went into qualifying naked and culminated in him qualifying in 18th place, only ahead of Esteban Ocon in the snail slow Haas and Ollie the Bear Behrman, who didn't even set a lap time at all. One Red Bull at the front, one Red Bull at the back. The more things change, the more they stay the same. This was incredibly alarming, and it appeared that after dumping Checo out of the sport in borderline acrimonious circumstances,
God, the amount of like Checo memes I saw on Twitter when Lawson qualified at the back
past Ocon in the damp conditions.
Oh,
But even when he did get
shouldn't
past,
laugh,
he
but-
couldn't seem to rein in the Saubers of Nico Hülkenberg and Gabby Bortoletto. If you can't catch up to the born-again Brinaldi, it's no shame, because that dude has been really good. But you're in a Red Bull, and he's in a Sauber. All the while, your teammate is up the front and contending for at least a podium and potentially a win if Lando Norris decided to be himself. The stark contrast at play was deeply concerning, and this all came to a head when, in the latter half of the race, Liam, or the Red Bull pit wall for that matter, made the novel mistake of attempting to drive slick tires in a lake. Liam gently spun off the track and smashed his gearbox into the wall as an homage to Isaac Hadjar. If there was any silver lining to this momentous disaster, it was that Liam's fastest lap was faster than Max and was second overall, only behind Lando. But they don't dish points out for this, and nor do they for turning your gearbox into dust. Out of 10, this weekend could be rated as a no. But of course, he had never driven around here before, so you could use that as some kind of excuse,
Yeah, and
I
also so many rookies were spinning out during the Australian Grand Prix because of like the weather and everything, and there were just so many rookies. So I think everyone was like, oh well, all the other rookies were doing it, so you know, it's the first race of the season, let's wait till the second race of the season. And boy, were we wrong.
Yes. However, the next round was in Shanghai, and he hadn't driven around here before neither. The issue of inexperience was compounded by the fact that this was a sprint weekend, which on its own I got beef with, but one rant at a time here, folks. Sprint qualifying came about, and Liam was last. Stone dead last, adding to New Zealand's long laundry list of head-hanging moments in sport.
Come on, New Zealand. You're better than this.
In the sprint itself, he did climb up the pack with some daring moves, and honestly, it was encouraging to see. But you would expect that, given the car that he was in. It may not have been the best car, but surely it's better than these other ones. Right?
I wanted to be like, oh my god, he's overtaking people, but like, you're in a Red Bull.
Qualifying came about. Redemption for Liam. Q1 came to a close, and last again. I'm dying over here. Thanks to this, Red Bull opted to start Liam from the pit lane again, and once he got out and joined the race, he progressed up the field at the rate of which hairs grow on a chimp's scrotum. He often found himself battling to either get ahead or get away from Jack Doohan in the Alpine. He would ultimately come home in 16th place on the road, behind the Toro Rosso of Hadjar, who he could not rein in those last few laps, despite being markedly faster than Doohan, who was ultimately penalised for extending the turn 14 hairpin.
Sorry, I know I keep pausing it, but I had my concerns, as a lot of people did, going into the 2025 season with a lot of the rookies. Okay? I know people weren't classing Lawson as a rookie because he had done a couple races at like AlphaTauri or whatever they're called. So everyone was like, well, he's like done a few races, so he's not a rookie. In my eyes, he was a rookie. So I'm just going to put him in that category. So I had my doubts about Lawson. And then the Isaac Hadjar thing, I watched him in F2. And yes, I was like, oh my God, like he's at the front. Oh my God, he's really good, blah, blah, blah. I feel like the announcement was really rushed when Red Bull announced that, you know, Isaac Hadjar would be driving at AlphaTauri. I don't know whether that's just me, but when it came out, I was like, oh, it felt like they had just randomly picked someone and been like, okay, we need to fill the seat, here we go. So that's how I felt, and I was like, oh gosh, like even though I watched him in F2 and it was really exciting to see, I'm concerned putting him in an F1 car. I don't know whether that's going to work, but here we go. I was wrong there, and I will happily admit that, because in the first two races, he has, you know, shown that he can do really well in that car. He's been taking it at times. He's been in like P6, P5, so that's good on him. The Doohan thing, again, there were those rumors that he has like a 5-race contract, and then if he doesn't perform, Franco will replace him. Nothing has stood out really in the first two races for Doohan, so I'm a bit concerned for him that he might get replaced soon, if the rumours are true. So I'm worried for him. The Antonelli thing, I can happily say that I was wrong there. I said in so many videos, I was like, I'm so excited to see him in an F1 car, especially in a top team straight away. But because they jumped him from F4 to F2, he'd only done a season in F2 and then he was in a top team in F1. I was like, oh my God, I feel like that's going to go really wrong. And he's like so young as well. I'm scared. We shouldn't really put age into it because Max was so young and look at him now. But I was really worried for him, and now he's performing like so well, and due to like Ferrari's disqualifications and stuff, he's like higher than both Ferrari drivers in the drivers' championship. So I have to give it to Antonelli there. And the Ollie Behrman thing, I was really looking forward to seeing Ollie Behrman in Haas, and obviously he did a couple races with Haas. He did that race with Ferrari as well in Jeddah, so everyone was like, oh my god, he's going to be so good, because he did perform so well. The Australian Grand Prix wasn't great. He had problems with his car, and last race he didn't really stand out that much either. So I don't know. Actually, I think he finished, was it in the top 10 or something like that? He did sort of well in China, so I hope he does well going into Japan, because that was the one rookie that I was rooting for. So hopefully he does well. And then finally, the Bortoleto thing. Again, I watched him in F2 and stuff, and I was like, yeah, he's really good. But I didn't expect him to be announced as a driver for F1 this season. I can't lie. I didn't see it coming. So when Sauber was like, Bortoleto's driving for us in 2025, I was like, whoa. Feel like we've just jumped on something here. There's another rookie on the grid. I was really concerned. At the moment, he's not really shining through, but I'm sure we've only had 2 races of the season, so I'm sure he'll do well. So I was wrong with like Isaac Hadjar and Antonelli, and I guess you could say I was wrong with Behrman at the moment, because I really wanted him to do well, and I was like, yeah, he's going to do so well, and at the moment he just hasn't. But the Lawson thing, I was right there. Bortoleto, I didn't really have an opinion on him. I just thought, oh, I can't believe he's in F1 already. Like, I feel like that's really rushed. But hey ho, that's my opinions on all the rookies, and I'll stop rambling now.
By about 4.5 prefectures, Liam's 16th place became 12th after Doohan's penalty, Gasly's disqualification, and Ferrari being Ferrari. It's also worth noting that while he did finish ahead of Yuki, that came with a mighty fine asterisk. Firstly, both the AlphaTauris were handicapped due to a bungled strategic call, and then later on, Yuki's front wing appeared to yeet itself out of existence, forcing him to pit and throwing him down the pack. But nobody was fooled. See, while the Racing Bull was looking very, very good in these first couple of races, Yuki was definitely driving as if he had a point to prove. In other words, he was driving as he largely was throughout the last year and a bit. The Yuki of old definitely had some problems, but these were largely gone. And what we have now is the dude who was in the form of his life, and someone who should have been put into that second Red Bull seat from the start. Instead, we had Liam, drowning like an Aussie Prime Minister off for a cold swim. Sure, he was inexperienced with the tracks, but lest we forget, there were 5 other rookies on that grid, and none of them struggled as much as he did. Due to this extraordinarily bad showing, the dysphoria around the motor racing world was quite extreme. People questioning what the hell Red Bull were doing, that they fired Checo for this? And New Zealand media were pretty quick to note all of this and dispatched one of their 2 tactics, either full copium or a full-on Cena-esque heel turn. Although Liam himself is making no excuses, saying that his performances were just not good enough, and that while he doesn't have enough time to really grow, that's just the reality of Formula One, and that issue of time is very, very real.
Yeah.
Already there are talks of him being dropped after just 2 rounds in lieu of Yuki, with Liam being dumped back to Minardi, and even the prospect that he would be dumped completely and that the Racing Bull seat would be taken up by contract journeyman Franco Colapinto.
Yeah, I remember seeing that
rumor,
rumor, and that was crazy.
But even though it's now pretty much officially confirmed, you have got to wonder whether Red Bull should have given Liam one last chance at the 3rd round in Japan, because he does have experience around Suzuka in a Formula 1 car and had actually beaten Yuki that day as a teammate in 2023. It's a circuit that he knows, and thus the catch-up game would not be as prominent. But would that be enough? His lack of pace, especially in qualifying, has largely been down to the lack of confidence in getting his car to behave like a car. Driving conservatively to tone down the snaps is killing his runs, and it is apparent that his inability to understand the nuances of the car is why the gap between he and the Flying Dutchman is so vast. And being at a familiar track is not going to totally extinguish that. But this theme of a driver struggling to adapt to a Red Bull is not a new thing. This has been going on for years now. Back in 2019, Pierre Gasly was drafted in to fill the void left by Daniel Ricciardo. Despite coming in with high praise from his Toro Rosso stint, Gasly almost immediately drowned, to the point where in Hungary, he was lapped by Max with no mitigating circumstances. And so,
That's
being the
hard.
tight ship that they is, he was promptly dumped after 12 races, and in came Alex Albon, who, despite some glimpses of promise early on and a couple of podiums, also struggled badly in that seat. And with Checo having the season of his life at Team Stroll in 2020, Albon was vamoosed, and Checo Checo was signed for 2021, and this did appear to be a good signing at first, but once the Red Bull began to lose form toward the end of 2023 going on 2024, the differences in lap time between the two drivers was becoming too much, and even a contract extension was not enough for Checo to regain his mojo, and thus was dumped at the end of the year. In came Liam Lawson, and it appears that history is just repeating itself. It's been 7 seasons now, and nothing is changing. We know how good Gasly is, we know how good Albon is, we know how good Checo was, yet that damn second Red Bull seat seemed to wipe all of our memories, and the stints there almost obliterated all of their careers. They all struggle with a car that, while not built around Max, is clearly something that only really he can drive, and a lot of the time even he doesn't like it. You build a car to be as fast as it can go, but there is a tolerance level to it from the drivers, and if Max Verstappen is saying that your car isn't great, it's not freaking great. You've got a car problem, Red Bull, to go along with your severe driver mismanagement problem. Now, I'm not too sure.
And now they don't have Adrian Newey, so God knows what's going to happen.
Has been from Dr. Helmut Marko, who is living, breathing proof that you don't need any discernible talent to keep a job that you're badly out of your depth in. Take away his coup of signing Max in 2014 thanks to promising him a Formula 1 seat, and what you're left with is a complete mess of a driver development team. There has been some good talent come through, yes, but how and why he selects his drivers is beyond me. There's talk of him wanting Colapinto, despite saying that his junior formula results were not that great. But then again,
that shot there of him, Franco, and Lawson is crazy.
Dense, melted old goat. Did you not reckon that when he beat your drivers in a lesser team in a summer series 5 years ago when he was living on budget ramen and Steven Seagal movies? Most F1 YouTubers out there have deeper wheel knowledge than this guy, and do you realize how low that bar is? And besides, as much as I rate him, why even factor in Colapinto here? Don't you already have Arvid Lindblad? You know, a driver that you asked for special dispensation for a super license for? This whole debacle reeks of mismanagement, and it has destroyed careers. Nick De Vries was brought in for 2023 for AlphaTauri based off of one super sub race and ended up getting dumped after 10 races. And likely, Marco's mind was made up well before that even. You then brought back Ricciardo, only to almost immediately lose faith in the guy. If you actually had a brain, even if only a small one, which beats whatever it is in that hollow skull of yours, you would have put either Liam Lawson or Ayuma Iwasa in that second AlphaTauri seat for 2023. You would have then had 2 seasons of comparable results against Yuki to discern who would have been the best option to succeed Checo in 2025, and instead you took a gamble on someone you looked over in 2023, while the 2 other drivers that you
it's just not looking good.
Gonna be great.
That's what I'm taking from this video.
Almost immediately. Merriam-Webster has just updated their dictionary. You look up fraud and you'll just see a picture of this guy. So Yuki has now been granted that Red Bull seat, all in front of his home crowd, and genuinely about freaking time. And it's kind of remarkable that after all the pissing around that was done toward the end of last season, we ended up with a driver lineup that we should have had in the first place after almost destroying the careers of a driver that you guys had more faith in. But while this has been a long time coming, quite simply, this has to work. And not just for one session or one round. This has to work on a consistent basis. Because if Yuki drowns, what exactly are the alternatives for Red Bull? You go for Hadjar? You go for Lindblad? Colapinto? Exactly how many careers do you want to ruin in vain chasing your tail? Yuki is going to have to break the trend set down by 4 other drivers that we all knew could drive before they got this poison chalice. And the latest is perhaps the most egregious, because this is happening 2 races into Liam Lawson's tenure. He has had no grace period, and let's not start pretending that he couldn't drive or that he's forgotten to. I've already talked about what he's done in the past, especially up against Albon and Yuki when they were teammates, so I'll save y'all the propaganda gospel. But let us not also forget what the likes of Gasly, Albon and Checo did before and after they were in that seat themselves. Either way, the disaster of Liam Lawson definitely wasn't solely down to Red Bull's equivalent of the curse of the Bambino. As he himself would admit, he just wasn't good enough. A humility and self-reflection that quite a few drivers could learn from. But I still have faith in the guy that many tragics are already referring to as Lawson. Real
Lawson! I haven't heard that nickname.
What next? We're gonna start calling him Law Javier? Humor on this platform really has tanked, hasn't it? But you know, that Minardi looks pretty good so far, and much more manageable than the Red Bull is. I mean, I don't know, going back there could not only help him rediscover his form, as well as the cure for cancer, but could also save his career, as a total dropping as widely rumored with regards to Franco Colapinto could have put an end to it all. And please, don't let the hate watch blind y'all. Maybe the demotion to Minardi will be a blessing in disguise. Maybe Yuki will buck the trend and actually push the Flying Dutchman. Maybe Red Bull will grow some sense and issue Marco with a one-way bus ticket to fuck off Phil. Whatever the future holds for all involved,
We all pray for
I
that
just
day.
hope and pray that we can all collectively behave like grown, civil adults. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Oh, I mean, it was a good video and it raised some valid points there. My only thing with Yuki now moving to Red Bull is, one, thank God. Like, we've been waiting for this for so long and I'm so happy that he is finally getting his chance. But then, like he said there, there's the other thing playing in the back of your mind. Like, if Yuki doesn't perform, what are they going to do? Who are they going to put in that seat? I'm just worried. Like, I'm so excited to see Yuki finally at Red Bull in like a top team. I really hope that he's like consistent and he gets some podiums, maybe even some wins, because I feel like he has the potential to do that. But you also think, oh my God, this has happened to so many drivers that go into Red Bull, and now I'm worried. What if it does happen to Yuki as well? Who are they going to then try and find for Red Bull? You know what I mean? So that is just constantly there now when somebody goes into that second seat. Yeah, it is a bummer for Lawson, but at least they didn't kick him out of F1 fully. He's still with Red Bull. He's just back at the junior team. It's not even a junior team anymore. Let's just stop calling it that. AlphaTauri. That is what I'm going to call it. AlphaTauri or Toro Rosso. I can't keep up with all of these like new names that they have every season. So yeah, at least he's not kicked out of F1 fully, and you know, I hope that he can do well at AlphaTauri. And if he struggles, especially with the way that Isaac Hadjar has been performing, right? He's been getting like P5s, P6s, like in qualifying, and he's been doing really well in races. Is Lawson going to be able to match that? And if he doesn't, what are they going to do? You know what I mean? So it's interesting, and I'm excited to see what happens in Japan, which is next weekend. But that video in itself was a good video. So thank you to the people who requested this video. And with that being said, if you have any other videos that you'd like me to react to, drop them in the comments. I'm working my way through everybody's suggestions at the moment. If you did want to check out any of my other socials or become a Patreon member and get early access to videos like this or top priority video suggestions, then you can do all of that down below. But I hope you enjoyed today's reaction, and I will catch you next time for the next one. Bye.